to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. You know, I got it right this time because I just recorded an hour ago and I got it wrong. So I get it right now, all for you guys because I love you. So this episode here for this week, I want to welcome a new guest to the show. Actually, another a fellow podcast host in their own right here. They use a little bit more technology than I do, as we only do audio here. So, you know, they're over there on YouTube, you know, really making the waves. So I want to welcome to the podcast the host of the Mat Mindset, Mr. Drew Elder. Welcome, Drew. How you feeling, man? Thank you for doing the show.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you for making the time. And, you know, like I said beforehand, you know, there's been some scheduling and rescheduling and what have you. So I really appreciate your flexibility on this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I totally get schedules and being busy and trying to finagle your life. I get it. No big deal. I'm just happy we're able to do it, man. Thank you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, and that's kind of the whole thing with the podcasting world to me. Is like, there's always time to make it happen. It's just a matter of, like, it's like a puzzle, you know, like, can this piece fit here? Okay, we can fit. Oh, we got to move this piece, but we're always going to be able to make time. So I'm glad you're able to do so. And I'm glad we're able to get this together. So, I guess the first thing, you know, I want to know, you know, just as a fellow podcaster, because that's one thing to me is whenever I speak to someone that does a podcast, you know, this is still relatively new to me. I've been doing it a couple of years, but it's still new to me. And I'm always like, hey, so what are your secrets? So tell me about your show. So let's talk about the Mat Mindset. So, you know, what steered you in that direction? And, you know, like, tell me a little bit about the show.
So me and one of my closest, we were watching some UFC fights one day, and then we were just talking about the fighters, and I was telling him about, like, some jiu-jitsu and all the stuff that I've done, or previous experiences that I've had with MMA or boxing or whatever I was doing. And he was like, you know, you should probably start a podcast. And I was like, why? Like, it's not, you know, I'm not fucking Joe Rogan or Ariel Helwani or somebody like that. He was like, yeah, but you know what you're talking about. And he's a big UFC fan too. And so I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. Let's plan it out. I just don't want to jump into it and just, like, have nothing to talk about, you know? So we started bouncing ideas back and forth for each other. And he actually is the one that came up with the name, the Mat Mindset. Unfortunately, he couldn't do a lot of the shows that I've had so far just because of his personal life. He's a new father and all that. So he's extremely busy, if you will. So once I started the podcast, it was just the first couple episodes were just me talking about, like, trying to build my, my, like, not reputation, but, like, the fact that I know what I'm talking about, trying to tell people, oh, I'm not just some fan. I've fought before, I've competed before, I still currently train. I feel like that, like, builds credibility in certain topics, especially in combat sports, just because you can be a fan and not know what you're talking about, and everyone, you know, people who train will know, like, oh, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But you get someone who's trained before or competed before, and you're like, okay, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. So I figured the first couple episodes, I was just trying to build my credibility and make it seem that I know what I'm talking about, which is, I like to think is true. And then after that, I was like, okay, there's only so much that I can talk about my previous experiences. Let's start having guests on the show. And I fought MMA for a little bit here in the city of Houston. So I have a few connections within the MMA community here in Houston. So I reached out to a couple buddies of mine and had them on the show to start. And then everyone was telling me to get on YouTube. And so I started the YouTube channel thing here recently. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to start a podcast that I'm passionate about. I do love the combat sports community, jiu-jitsu, MMA, whatever. It's been a big part of my life for the last, like 10 years or more. And so just being able to talk about it and be about it on a regular basis on the podcast it's very fulfilling to me, to be honest. And I just really enjoy it, and it's fun. And you never know who you're going to have on the show. Thankfully, I was able to have Lauren Murphy on not too long ago. So that was cool. I've had other local fighters, Jacob Berry and Donovan Manuel, on, who both are professional MMA fighters for Fury. I had Greg Sanzo on the show. He fought professional Muay Thai in Thailand, and I've done a few private lessons with him as well. So he's a great episode. So it's just fun to be able to bring these people at different disciplines on the show and just get their experiences within combat sports and their life as well.
Okay. When you started the podcast, like, or even the ideal of starting at house, like how long before you actually got things rolling from the thought of doing it? Like, was there any hesitation, or was there any kind of procrastination leading in, or did you just say, you know what, let's just jump right to it and get going?
Oh shit, man, there was a lot of procrastination, a lot of doubts. I still have doubts about it, but I'm just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna put it out there. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And like we were talking about off the air a little bit, I was a radio television major in college, so I've always wanted to do something with media or radio TV type stuff. And so this has always been, like I said, a passion of mine. But it's hard putting yourself out there, you can think of these grand ideas and want to do all this cool shit, but putting it out there, everyone's so afraid of the criticisms and the backlash that they may get. And so that was a big thing for me too. I was like, what if people hate it? And, it's just going to piss me off, whatever. But then I got to a point where I was like, I don't fucking care. I'm just going to put it out there because I like doing it. If people like it, they do. If they don't, they don't. Then it is what it is. I'm just going to go have fun with it. And that's what I'm still doing. And it's been a blast.
Good. That's always, I think, one of the issues when it comes to, putting anything out, is the concern of what others will think. And I still have those issues. I mean, but I also, think about it too, same way. It's like, fuck them. It's mine. It's my thing. And if you don't like it, don't listen. But if you do like it and you're along for this ride, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. But for those that are haters and doubters, you do your own thing. You do it too.
Yeah.
And then, do it better. As a matter of fact, I had someone on Instagram when I did a repost really early on in my Instagram and career, I guess, I don't know, time, I put up a post and somebody, got upset with one of my posts and said, you take this down right away, which the fucking balls on this one. Tell me how to live my life. But,
right.
They're like, take this down right now. This is trash technique and da-da-da. And I was like, okay. And I replied, I was like, well, I'm not going to do that, but I will do this. You go make the video yourself, do it better, share it, and I'll repost it. They never did, so fuck them. But that's what people are, though. That's what people do. They they always want us to doubt ourselves. They want to try to control us, when they doubt themselves, really, and then try to I knew they were a loser. And it's like, no, fuck them. Right. So good for you for any doubt that you may have had, and you're just like, no, I can't doubt myself. Let me jump out there and do it, because if not now, then when? Right.
You're going to be somewhere in 5 years. Might as well be somewhere that you want to be, or somewhere that you think you could be,
Yeah, yep, exactly. So with the podcast, how frequently do you release episodes? How often are you recording?
So it's sporadic at this point in time. I'm still trying to figure out life as well. I'm trying to train. I'm trying to schedule these podcasts. I'm trying to do school shit. So I have a full-time job as well. I work 48-hour shifts as a firefighter paramedic. So I'm trying to balance several things and scrape things off the plate and add new things on the plate. So ideally, I would like to do them once a week, but at this point in time, it's just so sporadic that I can't guarantee that once a week thing. And I don't want to be fake and be like, oh yeah, it's once a week, and then I don't put one out every single week, and people are like, oh, fuck this guy, he's not living up to his word. So I don't actually have a set schedule at this point in time, I'm actively working on getting new guests for the summer and recording as much as I possibly can so I can put out as many episodes as physically possible. But at this point, it's very sporadic.
Yeah, sometimes it's got to be that way, though. I think a lot of folks don't understand. There's some podcasters that this is their full-time job, and then there are those of us like yourself and me where we have a family, we have work, we have chores around the house. Shit, I gotta go mow the backyard sometime soon. It's like trying to make this podcasting happen. It can be stressful, it can be hectic, but I think that's the thing too, as a listener to a podcast, and behind the scenes, like, oh my God, like, you got a lot of shit going on, and you're able to give us this content when you can. Just like as listeners, we should be like, yo, thank you for dropping this knowledge on us that you have to offer. So as someone who knows the behind the scenes on that kind of stuff, but also as someone that listens to podcasts, I want to give a thank you to you just for your efforts in putting that work out there, because I know it ain't easy. So shout out to you.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. It is difficult. I would love to put more episodes out there. I genuinely enjoy talking to people of the combat sports community, and but I appreciate the support. I appreciate the support and the confidence in me. Thank you. It means a lot.
Absolutely. With your martial arts background, your fighting background, can you share a little bit of that info with me, like just kind of the background on it, when you started, and where you're at right now in training?
Sure, man. So I played team sports in high school, and right before high school ended, I stopped playing basketball, and I was like, I need something else. I'm still very competitive, and so I stumbled upon Muay Thai and stand-up striking, boxing, and stuff. So I started doing that, and I liked it a lot. It was great. And a friend of mine, he was like, hey, you should come do a grappling class with me. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I have very little drive to get smashed by somebody in side control or whatever. And so he was like, just do one class, just see if you like it or not. I was like, all right, fuck it, fine. So I showed up to the class, and I absolutely hated it. I was correct. I was like, fuck this. This is claustrophobia central. This is bullshit. I don't want to do this. So I didn't do grappling for a long time, but then he was like, hey, you should fight MMA. You'd be good at it. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, getting punched in the face with those little 4-ounce gloves doesn't seem very appealing to me. These little 12-ounce, 16-ounce gloves that I've been training with is a lot easier to take than a fucking 4-ounce glove. And he was like, just try it out and just train grappling, see if you like it, and then go from there. So then I saw Forrest Griffin fight Rampage Jackson, and I was like, that's fucking cool as shit. I got to get in there and mix it up and try that. Because my whole life I wanted to be a professional athlete. And when I was doing boxing and Muay Thai and stuff, it didn't really translate into being a professional boxer or a professional Thai fighter. But once I saw that MMA fight, I was like, okay, I guess I have to train jiu-jitsu in order to be good at this. And so I started training grappling. Hated it, but it was basically like immersion therapy. I started with no-gi grappling, and I was like, if I want to fight even amateur, I have to be decent or okay. I have to be a little better than mediocre on the ground. And I started training and everything, and I had my first fight at 18 in college. I won that by a split decision. That's a whole other story in itself. But after that fight, I continued to train, and I trained a lot of stand-up still. I didn't train that much ground still because I still wasn't a big fan of it. Just a lot of takedown offense. And then my second MMA fight, I got choked out in like a minute and a half. And right after that, I was like, maybe I should put more emphasis on this grappling stuff. So I started training a little bit more grappling and trying to get over the anxiety of everything. If you've never trained jiu-jitsu before, it's very shocking to be put in side control with a heavy cross face and not being able to move or get out of it. You're like, oh fuck, like I can't get out of this. Like, it's very anxiety inducing. It's very claustrophobia inducing. So I just had to kind of immersion therapy myself into it to make sure that if I wanted to fight MMA again, then I had to be good at the grappling thing. I ended up not fighting MMA again just because of there are certain people back then in my life that I should not have listened to, but I did. All my fault, of course. Um, then with life just kind of happened and kind of got in the way. I graduated college. Um, Throughout college, I was still boxing. I've had about 7 boxing matches, and most of them were in college, and I had a couple outside of college. But I would always end up going back to some form of combative sports training, be it boxing or even jiu-jitsu. And when I started training jiu-jitsu, it was no gi, like I said. But in college, I put the gi on, and I was like, I don't want to train in this gi. Like, I don't need this bullshit. It's fucking pajamas, and I'm fighting in the cage, and no one's going to grab my shorts. So when I started training in the gi, I was like, oh shit, this is significantly different than not having any, not just wearing fight shorts and that's it. So I started training in the gi, and I actually really liked the gi for a while, but then I got out of it again because I'm a no gi guy at heart, I guess. But after college, like I said, I was still training jiu-jitsu, and I ended up boxing again in 2018 and won that fight by second round TKO. So, and that really propelled me to kind of get back into MMA and fighting in general. And I started training more heavily in jiu-jitsu after that fight. And right now, I'm currently trying to get back into the cage. We're going to see what happens. I mean, I'm going to train. I've been training in MMA, and I'm still training jiu-jitsu, a lot more jiu-jitsu down here in Spring, Texas at Torres Jiu-Jitsu. So, and I'm training at Main Street Boxing for my MMA as well. So I'm hoping that things go my way, but just going to train and see what the hell happens. And that's all you can do, really. Just keep training, be consistent, and just keep getting your ass kicked until one day you're ready to mix it up in the cage again. That's what's happening to me, at least.
Yeah. I always find it, at the very least, just keep going, just keep working, and you'll land, regardless, because at the end of the day, as long as we're doing something, it's better than just sitting around and saying, well, I could have, or I should have, or, or the worst are the ones that, are sitting around doing nothing, but then shit talking the ones that are doing something. It's like, ugh, those guys suck. Yeah. You're a loser.
Shit all day. Right.
Yeah. It's everywhere, whether it be, basketball, football. I mean, hell, I have another podcast where that's pretty much all we do on that podcast. Then every so often I have to be the voice of reason to point out, wait a minute, we can say all this shit, but I mean, we ain't doing it. So, I mean, they're better than us.
Right.
Yeah. But that's how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I said, I think it's really worse in the combative sports community because you see these fighters who go out there in the UFC or local guys or whatever, and they put their heart on the line, and then they have a bad performance, and then everyone's like, oh, he looked like shit. This didn't, he couldn't strike, he couldn't grapple, he couldn't get his takedowns, blah, blah, blah. But that's coming from a person who's probably never stepped foot in the cage, the ring, or any sort of competition mat to really see what they're made of. So they want to talk all this shit, and then it's like, but you've never competed like one time. You're just you don't even train. Like, it's different for people that train, but the people that do that shit the most, I find, are people that don't even train at all.
Yeah. Well, they're the folks that will refuse to train, even. One of the things that, you think about too with fighters is in comparison to, your regular, your seasonal sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, things like that, is these players, they can go out there, have a bad game, bad night, and come back and bounce back, a couple nights later or a week later or whenever the next time out. And, what have you done for me lately? Is kind of the mindset. It's like, oh, they got a triple double this week. All right. Well, last week, they only scored 12 and they, got 2 rebounds. But this, today they just got a triple double. Okay. They're on top. Whereas with a fighter, it's like you go out and have a bad performance. you may not be seen for 3 months, if not more. So it's even worse there because, people do have this thing of, well, the last time this fighter fought, they got knocked out in, under a minute, or the last time this fighter fought, they got grapple fucked and submitted right away. And that's all people remember. So it's, easier for those people to talk shit. But also those are the same folks who have never trained. And I think with fighting versus other sports too, it's like everybody, like, you can look at football and be like, well, I know I'm not good at football. Or I know I'm not good at basketball. I know I can't do this. I know I can't hit a home run. I know I can't ice skate, but everybody thinks, oh, I can fight. It's like,
everybody.
Okay.
Everybody thinks they can fight. And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I love that you said that, because it's so funny, because you get these people who, like you said, who think they can fight. And once they train one time, they're like, oh, fuck, I really have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm just swinging and hoping for the fences, or I'm just going to tackle somebody and hopefully I don't get choked out or something. And in college, that happened to me one time. This guy thought he could fight, and he was like, I'm just going to tackle you. And I was like, we can go to the mats if you want. I mean, I'll let you tackle me as hard as you can. Like football, he was a rugby player, and he was like, you're going to let me tackle you? I was like, yeah, bro, I don't give a fuck. It's not going to hurt. Like, we're on these mats, and even if it was on concrete, like, I'm still going to win. He was like, all right. I was like, you ready? He was like, yeah. So we started, and he tackled me. I was going to say blast doubled, but that's not what he did. He tackled me. I wrapped up a guillotine and submitted him in like 5 seconds. And right after that, he was like, oh, okay, I see what you mean now. I'm sorry. I was like, it's cool. It's no big deal.
Well, that's the funny thing too. It's like, you get people that, and I was that guy too, I came into jiu-jitsu off of, basketball and football, and I had a healthy respect for the sport because I was I've been an MMA fan for a very long time. So, finally stepped into do jiu-jitsu. I was like, okay, I'm bigger than most of these guys. I'm stronger than, most of these guys. I'm a natural athlete. I'm gonna come out here and run shop on these cats. And that was not the case. I got manhandled and I felt silly. I almost didn't come back. And, and I'm glad I did because, over the time, you start really working and you start realizing, you do have these things. But again, you have a lot of folks that I have friends that I think would be fantastic grapplers, and they're just, nah, I don't think I want to try that. I don't, but they'll talk shit, when we watch MMA fights. They'll talk shit. They're like, all this and all that. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand where they're coming from. You've never been in that position. When you're watching a fight go to the ground and you see somebody get in, like, you got Khabib just smothering somebody, and like, why don't they just stand up? It's like, because they can't.
They can't. Yeah. The guy I was just telling you about, Derek Leffrink, he's like I said, he's a big UFC fan as well. And we watch fights together quite often. And he was like, I kept trying to get him to train jiu-jitsu because I'm like, hey, man, you'll have a new respect for the sport if you train jiu-jitsu. Like, I promise you. He wasn't one of those armchair quarterback guys saying that he could do it. He's always been one of the guys that's been like, yeah, that shit looks hard as fuck. And those guys, I don't know what's going on, but I know, like, it's difficult and I couldn't do what they're doing. And so I was like, hey, well, just come train with me one day and you'll get a newfound respect for the sport, and you'll see like a very bare minimum of what actually jiu-jitsu entails. So he was on the podcast and he lost a bet because the bet was if the video or whatever got 50 likes, then he would have to train jiu-jitsu. So it ended up getting 50 likes or whatever. He came to train jiu-jitsu, and we were just doing like escapes, like side control escapes. And I was like, all right, Derek, I'm going to put you in side control, and you're going to do the exact same thing we did at the beginning of class. Just get your hips out, et cetera, telling him how to frame and get his hips out and create some space and escape. And the first couple of times he did it, I was, offering no resistance, just kind of like, okay, he's getting the movement down, he's getting the motion down. That's great. And so another time I was like, okay, buddy, like, I'm not going to let you get out this time. Like, I'm going to apply some pressure, not 100%, but we're going to apply a little bit of pressure. And he was like, okay. So we started going, and like almost immediately it was just you could tell he was like, oh fuck, I don't know what to do anymore, and his mind went blank or whatever, right? And after the whole training session, we're talking outside, and he's like, man, I just have a newfound respect for jujitsu and MMA in itself, just because like I knew it was hard, but like that shit is hard as fuck. He was like I said, dumbfounded at how difficult it actually was. And a lot of people, I respect it. I respect that. I commend that, because a lot of people don't have the balls to even just come out and just train one day.
Yeah, like I'm still trying to figure out how to get my friends on the mats without it sounding intimidating. Because I mean, I like to think that I'm pretty good at like explaining, like, hey, this, being a gentle explainer,
Right.
but like no one wants to. And to be fair, my friend, we're all older. We're in our 40s, so yeah, nobody wants to, go out there and
Get injured.
Yeah, it's like, fuck all that. I'm not doing that. Like my one buddy, I remember years ago before I even started training. We would talk about like, movie scenes and stuff like that, and martial arts. And this is like the whole Taekwondo thing. And I remember my buddy, he's talking about it. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to do martial arts now because I've seen TV shows and movies where they put you in the kids class and you're a grown ass man and they're looking silly. And I was like, I don't think that's how that works. It's easy.
Right.
And then I started training and I explained. Well, it didn't help that I explained, like when I did the trial class, they had me work with a 14-year-old who was just beating the shit out of me. And that probably didn't help. But the fact is, I was in a class with adults, and he listened to the second episode of this podcast where I had a good friend on who trained, and she and her husband were explaining, how they're committed to jiu-jitsu. They devote like the bulk of their time to jiu-jitsu, and my buddy and I talked again, and I felt like I had him. I thought I had him. He goes, no, just kind of listening, to the one episode of the podcast. I don't think I want to do jiu-jitsu. I mean, like, I like to party, I like to go out and drink, and like, it sounds like if I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I'm not gonna have time to do that. And it's like, motherfucker, look, like, I'm your friend. I party with you. I still train. Like, no, I don't go out and drink, the night before a class, sure, but we still party. And it's like excuse after excuse. And, I find that with, quite a few people. And that, obviously in the martial arts community, we do get newcomers to the mat. So it's not everybody, obviously, but, you do still have quite a few people that they have a preconceived notion of what jiu-jitsu is, what Muay Thai is, boxing, that's a martial art in itself, wrestling, they have this ideal in their mind of what these things are. So they're like, nah, I don't think I want to do it, because, you get the one guy that'll say, well, I couldn't do MMA because, I'd get in trouble because, I'd snap, I'd see red.
I see red.
My favorite people.
Yeah.
But
like, no, you wouldn't. You'd see red, and then you would see fucking you coming out of unconsciousness.
The only red you're gonna see is your own blood, buddy. Relax. And it's not because we're beating the shit out of you. It's because you're spazzy and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You just fucking headbutted something and busted your nose. Like, just come learn. Like, you'll gain a healthy respect for the arts. And if you're a fight fan, there's another level there too, where I know once I started training, I watched fights way differently. And it opened up. It's like a video game, and the map opened up.
Yeah. It's like your brain expands. You're like, oh shit, I've seen this. Like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he like whistles at the TV and points to it and stuff. Like that's exactly like, oh, I've seen this before. I know what's going on here. Yeah, exactly. I definitely feel like trying to get someone to train. Like when I trying to get Derek to train, he was like, no, you're just gonna beat the shit out of me, and I was like, that's exactly the opposite of what I'm going to do. Like, I feel like a lot of my friends, especially like one of my best friends, he's like, no, you're just going to whoop my ass. And I was like, no, like, that's not the goal. Like, yeah, I don't think you understand. The goal for me is to facilitate your jiu-jitsu journey, not beat the shit out of you, to discourage you from training jiu-jitsu at all. Like, I want you to come to jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to beat the shit out of you, because that would just discourage you from coming to jiu-jitsu. So it's doing the exact opposite effect of what I want. So they get intimidated, and it's like, I'm not trying to intimidate you. I don't want to hurt you or beat you up or anything. I just want you to come enjoy jiu-jitsu and train. Like, I feel like you would enjoy it. And, it's always, I don't want to get my ass kicked, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like a lot of people, my friends included, are like, no, because I don't want to get beaten up by you. And it's like, that's not my goal. The goal for me is not to beat you up. Like I said, the goal for me is to facilitate your journey, to help you enjoy the sport of jiu-jitsu and learn how to defend yourself effectively.
Yeah, I've had a couple friends say that, the same exact phrase, and it's like, dude, I don't. First off, I could beat you up anyway. Number one. Number two, like, I don't want. Like, I honestly want my friends to come train because I think it'd be great for a great workout for them. Number one, but number two, like, if anything, I want you to train so maybe you could beat my ass. Like,
Right.
so, it's like my old neighbor. He showed up. He did a trial class with me, and it was fun. He had fun. He didn't sign up. He didn't return. But we talked about it. He had a different respect for martial arts. I mean, he's grappled before in the army, but just doing jiu-jitsu out there on the mats, he was like, there's a different sense there, and I appreciate it. And my whole thing is like, look, I just want to have my friends be able to defend themselves. It's like, yes,
Right.
like, weapons are a thing, but what if you don't have a weapon? What if you lose your weapon? What if whatever happens, you want to still be able to physically defend yourself? Like, my stance is always, be able to, you should be able to, like, physically defend yourself with or without a weapon. Know how to shoot, but also know how to fight. Know them both. Don't just feel like, hey, I can do one or the other. Know how to do both, because you never know when you're going to need one or the other. So, trying to get my friends to come out there and get on the mat.
You don't want to be a gardener in a samurai fight. You'd rather be a samurai in a garden.
Absolutely. And, when I look at my friends, it's like, there's a lot of tough guys with egos there, which is more reason for them to come out there on the mats, and train, I say, because again, when I stepped out there, I was that guy. I was full of ego. And, once that ego got deflated, I realized, okay, I'm not the baddest dude on the block. Well, I still was, but there's better dudes out there, that exist. And in my mind, even with training, it's made me now think like, I don't need to fight. I don't want to fight. If some shit goes down, hey, let's talk this down. Whereas I still have cousins, I still have friends that the first thing they want to do is like go and like swing on somebody. It's like, son, relax. It's like, we can talk this out and be friends and probably go get sushi afterwards.
Right. Or go have a drink or something.
Yeah. Like,
you just have no idea who's out there and who knows how to fight and who doesn't. Like, that's a big thing for me. Once I started to learn how to fight, you realize how little you know. And then you realize, oh, there's a person that looks like Mikey Musumeci out there who I think is a nerd, but he can beat the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah.
So you never know. You can't go based off looks. Like, I have tattoo sleeves. And so, like, someone might be like, oh, he knows how to fight because of the way he has a sleeve. But, who knows? There's a guy out there that could have two sleeves and been to prison who doesn't know how to fight. Or there's a guy with no sleeves with, a button-up shirt, a pocket protector who could beat the shit out of anybody because he's, like, looking like Stipe Miocic with glasses on,
Yeah, my buddy is
like
about
back
to go
in the day
get
when I first started MMA, it was like you got to look for the guys with cauliflower ear, because cauliflower ear is, I guess, the one thing. But now you never know, because some people don't ever get cauliflower ear. So it's a shot in the dark, basically.
Yeah, like my buddy, he's about to get a sleeve in a couple weeks. And I think that's more incentive now to make him get on the mats. Like, look, come learn how to fight. Even if he doesn't want to do jiu-jitsu, it's like, look, just join me on a Saturday morning for Muay Thai. Like, learn how to do something. Because if you're gonna look tough, at least be tough. Like, right. Like don't 100%. Because somebody see with the sleeves, like, oh, that's the one to challenge. You're like, oh, I'm not the one. It's like, Nah,
Yeah,
like be the one.
yeah, right, exactly. You don't want to be that guy that doesn't know how to fight, and then it happens, and you just look silly. You know,
Yeah, it's like
knowing how to fight
Christian.
is a life skill. It's a life skill,
Yes.
just like swimming, riding a bike is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like
And I
Christian
think
Slater said in True Romance. It's like I'd rather have a gun and not need it than to need it and not have it. That's the same thing with fighting.
100%. I would much rather know how to fight and win than not know how to fight and just get the shit beat out of me in the street.
Oh yeah.
You never know what's going to happen out there. Everything's so unpredictable now, especially the world is kind of going downhill as far as people
Yes.
and attitudes and stuff, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's always better to know, okay, I know how to handle myself a little bit. Like I'm not good at jiu-jitsu by any means. I'm just a 3-stripe blue belt, but like I know more than the guy who's sitting on the couch watching the UFC who's never trained a day in his life who may try to fight me for no reason.
Yes. I mean, your situational awareness of things is so much more keen than the guy who doesn't know how to fight, but they think they know how to fight. You know, they might have some sense of awareness of things, but it's like as someone who's, you know, your hobby is fighting, you know,
Right.
it's like you have a better awareness, and you know that awareness can keep you out of situations. That awareness can, you know, get you ahead of a situation, you know, but you know, you have folks that just think again, oh, I'm just gonna see red or I black out. And it's like, I can help you black out, trust me. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't want to. You know, I prefer that we don't do
Yeah,
this. Let's
exactly.
just talk it out. Like I had someone at an old job, you know, one of our tenants at one of my old jobs. This guy, he was huge and terrifying, and like I legitimately thought he was going to fucking beat the shit out of us. And you know, my manager looks at me like, "Oh, you know, you're a fighter, you're a trained fighter." I was like, "Yeah, I know that guy. Look at him. Like
Yeah, exactly.
he eats raw meat with gunpowder sprinkled on it. I'm not fucking with him." Like like as soon as he walked out of the
Right.
building, I ran over and locked the door and said, "Hey, call the police." Because like this isn't our
Yeah.
situation right now. So you know, and that's the thing. It's like if that was a younger Dante, I would have been ready for war and I would have got my ass stomped. But you
Yeah.
know, having that awareness, and I was like, okay, you know, knowing like, okay, I might know a thing or two, but this guy is not. We can't reason with this guy. We can't talk this guy down. He is dead set on being angry at us, and he's punching the counter right now, and he's screaming. We got to look for an opening to get this dude out of the building, lock the door, and you know, and it turns out like, you know, we ended up calling the police. Turns out he had a gun in his car. So, um, you know,
Wise move.
huge, huge situation avoided. So yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, not everything needs to be a fight. Sometimes it's like, look, we need to talk this down. If we can't talk it down, let me get out of this situation as best I can. You know, even you know, I know folks are like, "Oh, you never run from a fight." No, there's situations that I've run from, not like like sprinted from, but you know, I've definitely like let me go ahead and avoid this shit because I got a feeling that it's gonna go south for everybody involved, and I don't want to be part of that party.
100%. And I also feel like the fact that you're trained now gives you the advantage to be like, well, hang on, let me retract all that statement. I think it's a common misconception that just because you know how to fight means you're willing to fight everybody, when it's the
Yes.
exact opposite. Just because you know how to fight, that means you're like, I'm not going to fight the guy who's 6'8", 300 fucking pounds, because I know that I'm going to get the shit beat out of me, even if I'm a trained fighter. Like, okay. And, I mean, size matters in a fight. That's a huge thing in jiu-jitsu. Everyone's like, oh, size doesn't matter, strength doesn't matter. And strength does matter to an extent. Um,
Yes.
but even to train guys, it's like, what's a quote unquote safe fight and what isn't, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
not going to go around fighting everybody either. Um, but I think people who know that you know how to fight just automatically assume that you're just like, oh, I don't give a fuck, I'll fight anybody. And that's just not how it is.
No, and that's a huge point there too. Though it's like, it's like you got friends who don't fight, but they know you do. They know you can. So there's this expectation of like, hey, if we go out, we've got a bodyguard. No, like we go
Right.
out, what you have is someone that's going to try to again get us out of that situation or talk the situation down. I'm out here near Baltimore, and I'm not fucking around out there. Like I hate going to
Oh, hell
Baltimore.
no.
It's like, you just don't know what you're walking into. You got so many knuckleheads out there, and and the thing is, it's like there's situations where I remember, was it 2000 when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and we were sitting in the hotel room watching the game, and then we're like, what the fuck are we doing here? It's third quarter. We know the Ravens about to win. It's like, yo, let's head down to the city. So we get down to the city. It took us forever because we got on 95 and traffic was like just gridlock for miles back
Yeah.
because everyone wants to get in. Once we finally get into the city, we ran into some friends. Oh shit, what's up? You here too? We chilling, and then there's somebody with a Giants hat on out there, and someone turns me because back then I was that knucklehead that I was a hothead, I was dumb, and one of my buddies says, "Oh, that dude over there is talking shit about the Ravens. You should go fight him." And like I didn't. I said it was like I don't give a fuck. I'm a Detroit Lions fan, son. I don't even like the Ravens. But it's like people who don't know shit, or instigators even. People just want to always get some shit started. It's like, and again, I was in my 20s when that happened, whereas now I'm in my 40s. Somebody say some shit like that, I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like I'm moving on with my day. I got shit to do. I got to hit the grocery store and then Home Depot right after.
Right.
Like, I got shit to do, son. I got to fix his garden. But we just got to be smart about things. And there's so many people because they don't train. Like I feel like the folks that train are the folks that are the least of your worries because anyone that trains probably isn't going to be talking shit to you. Probably, that's not always a guarantee, but I would say 80% likely they're not going to talk shit. Whereas the people who are talking shit, whether it be on the internet, whether it be YouTube, whether it be, at a sporting event, those are the people who don't know shit, who can't do shit. And they think like, oh, like I'm safe behind, this keyboard. I'm safe behind these words. They might cross the wrong one. I don't talk shit in Philadelphia. That's just a place I'm not going to run my mouth.
Yeah.
I talk shit about Philadelphia here, though. Fuck those fans. They the worst fans in the world. But I ain't gonna talk shit to them
They
in Philly.
really are. Yeah. That's like the guy that was on Twitter and he was talking shit to Paul Felder. He was like, yeah, just stick to commentating because your fighting career was fucking trash and blah, blah, blah. And Paul Felder commented back and was like, would you say that to my face? And the guy was like, oh, no, you'd beat my ass. And Paul Felder was like, okay, fair.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite exchange on the internet ever. Just because it's like he knew, like, no, you beat my ass. Okay, cool.
Well, at least you admitted it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's safety in that too. There's nothing wrong with admitting, like, look, sometimes you talk shit, and as long as you understand, like I said, I have another podcast where we talk a lot of shit, but also I have to be the voice of reason and say, hey, but remember, guys, we can't do what they're doing. They're better than us.
Right.
We're just some guys in my fucking basement on microphones. Whereas,
right.
You do have guys that legitimately think, like, I think the post has come back up again, it's resurfaced, talking about, guys that think they could land an airplane. It's like, relax, dude.
No,
half of you can't drive.
Yeah, for real.
But it's not only dudes. It's not only dudes, because I said that shit to my wife. She was like, she admitted, no, I can't land a plane, but then she started like kind of constructing shit in her head, thinking, well, maybe. I was like, baby, you can't land a plane.
Yeah.
Just like, it's not something you can do. Just admit
That's
it.
so
You're
funny.
fine.
Yeah.
People are wild.
I'm glad my wife, she's she's trained jiu-jitsu with me before as well. And so that really opened up her eyes as well to be like, oh shit, like I may think I know what to do, but I can't. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't proposed that question to her before. I'm going to do that today or tomorrow or whenever. because I think that's pretty funny. I'm gonna ask her. I'll follow up with you in a few days.
Yes, I need the details. Because I've been
Yeah,
asking people that
yeah.
too. It was like, can you land an airplane? Surprisingly, a lot of folks have been like, I think I can. It's like, I'm going to go ahead and help you here out and
Nobody.
take away the can part and change
You
that to a
cannot. Yeah.
contraction and say, I can't. I think I can't. It's okay.
Right.
Like,
There's no
you
way
win
I
now.
could. I mean, you could get up there and be like, "Oh, it's just down or up, whatever it is to go down." See, I'm not. I'm already. I don't even know which way's down. So.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't know where to start. So, and
Yeah. Yeah.
there's always the thought of like, well, you don't want to give up. It's like, look, that's a situation where I, no matter what I'm doing, we're probably going to crash. I think my wife, that's what she said. Like, I would try to find a place where we can like safely crash. I was like, you're not going to be able to do any of that. Just go sit back in your
You can't
fucking seat,
safely
eat your
crash.
peanuts, and drink your drink your water, and accept it.
Yeah.
Like,
Give me some.
good
Give me one of
grief.
those small bottles of vodka to try to, help the pain a little bit.
Yeah, like
The way
at that point,
down.
I'm just like, look, we going down. We may as well party on the way down. How much vodka we got?
Yeah.
All right, not a
Exactly.
lot,
Yeah.
but I got some edibles.
That'll do.
Let's go
Yeah.
on this ride together. Good grief, people, man, I tell you. Um,
Yeah.
so with the Matt Mindset podcast, the so how does that? I guess the format of the show for you, like, is it kind of like an interview style? Is it just conversational? How we're doing here? Um, just like how does it work for you?
It all depends on the guest, really. I like to make it more of like how they got started in their sport, what their training regimens are like, what their recovery methods are like, their diet, any fights coming up, etc. But sometimes you just get off on these tangents and you just start going, and it's just fun. And like I had a guest on, Jacob Berry. We started talking about ballet because we were talking
Nice.
about like flexibility and stuff like that. And we started talking about ballet, and then I had his girlfriend on, Madison Gwynn. She's an amateur fighter here in Houston as well, and she went to Japan, and we started talking about her Japan trip. So it just depends, and most of the time I'm pretty good at sticking to the outlined format that I have. I write questions down on my phone, and I put it on like a little note, and as I ask the questions, I put them in bullets, so I know I've already asked this, that, the other thing already, so I don't go back to it. And then what helps again is the fact that I was a radio television major in college, so I've had some interview experiences, so I can kind of pull questions from what they say, and they're off the cuff, and they're not necessarily pre-planned questions, but I do have a set pre-planned amount of questions that it gives me kind of an outline to kind of stay on track of certain things. I don't mind getting off track, but I don't want to just bring on like let's say I was going to have Derek Lewis on the show. I'm not going to, but I don't want to get off on these tangents with him because he's Derek
Oh
Lewis,
yeah.
and I know that would happen. So I'd have to plan my questions out for him. But yeah, most of the time I just have a set outline of questions and go off that, and whatever happens from there happens. Like I had Matt Schnell on the show, and for audio only, and we stuck to the game plan super efficiently. We only got off track maybe like once or twice, and it went great. And then, like I said, other people have got on the show. Like I talked about Greg Sonzo, he was the Thai fighter, and we started talking about his experiences in Thailand, and obviously that's quite a few stories in itself. So
It sounds like we have a similar flow to our shows. I think more often than not, if anyone's ever heard this show, it's like I try to have a game plan, and more often than not, I just throw it out the window. Yeah, I ask
yeah,
the intro question, and then I say, okay, that's cool. And then because a lot of times conversation starts to form off of discussing how you got into training, or whatever brought
right.
us to the show, and then we steer into another conversation. I just had a teammate on earlier today. He's got a fight upcoming, and that was the conversation. Let's talk about your fight upcoming, and then we started talking about Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and then we started talking about X-Men 97, and then we wrapped back to fighting, and then we were like, all right, and let's go ahead and wrap up the episode. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's good to have that, the outline though, just in case, I try to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna try to be better. I promise.
I'd like to think that I'm okay at it. Just because like when I get off on these tangents, I look at my notes and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm really far off the subject matter right now. And then like we'll hit a lull in the conversation and I'll be like, okay, so circling back here, let's get back to this or whatever. And I'll start up the outlined questions again to kind of refocus the episode. Because I feel like a lot of people that have listened to my show, they want to know that these fighters have specific regimens and diets and training things, and they want to hear about how they got involved in combat sports and what they're doing to prepare for their fights and stuff. Most of the time I feel like they don't want to hear about like personal, like other extracurricular things besides their combative sports career. Like the name of the podcast is The Mat Mindset, so I typically try to keep it to what they do on and off the mats, and not, oh, I went to this party last week and it was fun and this, that, the other thing happened and blah, blah, blah. I try to keep it to like, okay, so a day in the life of me is I wake up at 6:30, I run 4 miles, I go back home, I sleep, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Just keeping it regimented. And because I know for me, like I watch all the UFC embeddeds because I like that shit. It's very interesting to me to see these fighters' lives. And I would like to have a show that's similar to that. Like, this is what they're doing to prepare, and then they'll fight this date or whatever. I always, at the last, couple minutes of the show, I'm always like, hey, open mic, the mic is yours. You have any shout outs, call outs, anything you want to say, the mic is yours. And I give the fighters and the competitors a chance to be like, yeah, follow my Instagram at this, shout out to my sponsors at blah, blah, blah. Check me, come buy tickets. I'm fighting for Fury FC this date or that date, or I'm fighting for the UFC this date or that date or whatever. Be sure to check it out. And I always give them a chance to plug their sponsors or their next fight or whatever they want to plug.
Yeah, that's, I think, when it comes to, the interview, or not even necessarily interview, but like, the guest format, it's like, depending on who certain guest stars, like, you got a fighter on there, and it's very important to make sure, you talk about the training regimen, talking about, the upcoming fight and things like that. And then, I know there are times where I'll have guests on here that, don't even train. Sometimes I'll just have guests on here. They might be, who knows? So I think we had a pro wrestling episode once. We were just talking about WrestleMania, but it's like, there's still a format, it's like, it's always good to have that roadmap, kind of that guide to make sure you're able to get back to base. Like for my horror podcast, that is for sure. Like I have to have that outline, because if the outline isn't available for that podcast, we are going to be like, I had an episode recently with somebody. I didn't have an outline, and we were supposed to be talking about found footage, and we ended up somewhere else. I think it was so far from it. I was like, oh my God, it wasn't like the episode was ruined, but I was just like, holy shit, I'm going to have to reevaluate the title of this episode now. And I might have to redo this theme with somebody else. But, when you have kind of like that, that format set, you can always get back home. You always want to have your funnel back, whether it be, okay, so we got a little off course here, with the fight, so let's go ahead and steer back. Or if it's like, okay, well, now we're talking about whatever, what got you into it, you still want to steer back. So
for sure.
It's good to have that though. And like you said, like being able to like kind of, drop questions off the cuff, like based off of what their answers are, or what the responses are, that's always, I think, appreciated. Because when you have like the generic questions kind of written off to the side, and it's like, they give you one answer and just kind of abruptly jump to a whole nother question subject that's nowhere close to what they were talking about. It's like, ooh, that was a hard left.
It doesn't work well. Yeah.
No. Like I've
Yeah,
been
you
there.
really have to focus on what people are saying and like be able to figure out, okay, they said this, that, the other thing. I can talk about this next, or
Mhm.
whatever. So yeah,
With you, having gone to school for radio and television, was that like always kind of like a plan, like growing up? Did you like think to yourself, you know what, I think I do want to be, in radio, or I wanted like, be like, in TV, like behind the scenes, whether it be, a producer or something? Was that always kind of a plan? Or, was it like, you're in school and you're like, hey, this looks fun, let me walk into this, and it continue to be fun, and you stuck with it? Or, yeah, I think I worded that right.
whenever I was in high school, I realized that I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That's what I wanted to do. And so when I went into college and discovered radio, I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I can do this. And I changed a little bit. I wanted to be like a radio host or whatever. Still focusing on sports broadcasting, but trying to get involved in the media to start, just because you need to start off somewhere. So
Sure.
once college ended, uh, pretty much was SOL. I couldn't find a fucking job to save my life. It's a very hard market to break into, even with the experience that I had. I just couldn't find a position. So that's how I ended up in the fire service. I just kind of fell into EMT paramedic stuff and ended up doing that. Um, but then, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do sports journalism and commentating and stuff like that. So I figured that was another catalyst to me starting this podcast, because I spoke to Brendan Fitzgerald through Instagram messages and stuff. And he was like, hey, start a podcast. If you're really serious about it, start a podcast, work on your skills. And then from there, you'll be able to get some experience and hopefully get noticed. So um, I followed his advice. And that was another reason why I started the podcast too, because it's experience that people need in order to be good at talking to other people.
Sure. Absolutely. My grandma told me, well, I told my grandma, and she scolded me a little bit. I said, because I wanted my grandma to be on here, and I told her, I says, Grandma, I'm not very good at interviewing, but I want you to be a guest. And she goes, well, baby, you might want to learn how to interview before you have me on. And it was kind of a kick to the balls I didn't need from my grandma. But
Yeah,
um
yeah, like fuck.
it's like, you're supposed to believe in me. But yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
like coming into this arena of podcasting, it's like you have this, well, I don't want to say you or me, but there are folks that have this sense of like, oh, it's going to be easy, we're going to jump in and like we're going to take off. And
it's not.
yeah, it's not easy. Like I don't, like for us doing a podcast, we're growing ourselves, we're trying to build our I guess our resume, if you will. And for you to recognize that though too, it's like, well, look, I still want to do this. And you get steered towards this direction, and you follow through with it. That's awesome, because there's some folks that they're like, that ship is sailed. I don't want to do this anymore. Or like, this is, it sounds impossible. It's like, podcasting is hard, but it's not impossible. I mean, it's just,
Shit.
you know
Yeah. I've always been one that whenever my wife will tell you this as well. If someone tells me, "Oh, you're not going to be able to do this," I'm always the one that goes, "Okay, watch this," and then I fucking go do that shit. So I've always been that way my whole life. Like I had people tell me I was never going to fight, and then I fought. I had people tell me that I was never going to do this, that, the other thing, and whatever it was, I worked extra hard to do those things that they said I couldn't do. So I've had people say like, how hard this is, man. You're like, it's difficult. I'm like, oh, great. I don't give a fuck. I'm just gonna
yeah,
go for it. I mean, you're never gonna accomplish your dreams unless you go for it. I know for a fact that if you have a dream and you don't try to actively obtain that dream, it'll never happen. But if you continually work at it, it just might, and you never know what's gonna happen until you try.
for sure. I mean, there's too many dreams that have just gone unrealized because people have doubted themselves. They've been doubted by others, and that
Yeah.
doubt from others sinks into them, and then they're like, well, you're right, maybe I'll never be nothing. And the thing is, it's like you can't believe that, especially if you want
No.
to do something, you know you want to be in the sports broadcast field. Fuck it, all right, that's a tough field to break into. Fuck it, I'm gonna still get in there. I just gotta, I gotta find another door, and keep trying at it, because
Yeah.
the second that you give up on it, it's like, they win.
Right. Exactly. That's 100% correct. And
That's what people, I think, a lot of people nowadays, they're so quick to just give up, and
Mhm.
it's hard not to. It's the easy route is giving up. The hard route is continuing on and trying to silence the naysayers and all that shit. That shit's hard, because
Yeah.
even now, I don't have the following that you have. I'm trying to get there, but but even now, I'm like, oh shit, dude. Like it's I get discouraged, but it's still new. My podcast, my show, it's still brand new. I'm still actively working on marketing and advertising myself and getting these guests on and trying to get people on that I think people would want to listen to. And it is extremely difficult to constantly have the utmost confidence in yourself. And then on top of that, me trying to get back into cage, I'm 33 years old, so I'm not by any means at my peak performance anymore like I was when I was in my 20s. But I still have this drive to be like, yeah, but if I just work harder than this guy, I can win. And it's the same thing with my podcast. If I just work harder than other people, or if I work harder than people think I'm going to work, and if I get these guests on and I have a good show, then it'll succeed and it'll get noticed. And that's the thing, man. You just gotta keep on keeping on. That's it. And that's hard for people nowadays because of people's mindsets. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm fucking David Goggins or Jocko Willink or somebody like that. Um, but I am going to say that people not being able to just push past the hard things, it it's very discrediting to themselves because you don't know where you're going to end up. And if you can just go a little further, just get past the uncomfortable shit just a little bit, see what happens on the other side. You never know where you're going to end up.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that excuse me, it's one of the things I think most folks just, again, lose sight of. It's just,
Sure.
push forward, work hard, and be
Yep.
you, be genuine, be, because that's the thing. It's like, say, David Goggins, Jocko, you know they exist, and people know. People are gonna go listen to them. But people want to hear
Yeah.
Drew. Let's hear Drew's take on it.
Yeah.
Let's hear Drew's story, because from what I hear from you, from just listening, here in our discussions, like, hey, I'm taking note from this. It's like, oh, okay. How to improve my own side. And as far as your following goes, I mean, like you say, you're brand new, you're just starting, but we all started. We're all brand new.
Right.
And that patience, give that time, and you're going to get there, especially when again, you're being authentic, you're being you. I think there's so much being seen. Like my daughter, she'll talk about wanting to do a YouTube channel and talking about copying someone else's YouTube, and it's like, well, baby, you can't do that. Like, I mean, you can, but
Yeah.
nobody's going to watch it because the original is there. Like, do your own thing, be your own self, be authentically you.
Right.
And that's where you're going to find your tribe and your base. And I think with what you have going with the Matt mindset, I think that's huge in itself. Building your own core, and having people listening, and also the big thing too is like doing video. Like having video, I think, is huge, especially these days. So you're moving in
It's
the right direction, my
definitely.
friend.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for noticing. I really do sincerely appreciate that. Because it starts with a thought and then you just go. And you're right. Like, I've never been the one to conform at all. I'm just not like that. I've never been that way. I've always been, okay, this is what the norm's doing. I'm gonna go do something else because fuck that. I don't want to do that shit. And so I'm never gonna be someone else besides myself. And I think there's such a big value in that, because whenever you have like a guest on, like let's say you have, I don't know, let's say GSP gets on my fucking show, and GSP, if you listen to this, feel free to come on the Mad Mindset. We'd love to have you. So, but let's say he gets on the show and I'm like, I just changed the way I speak to him, or I changed the way I ask my questions or whatever. It just comes off as fake and not authentic. But if I'm like, hey, you know, what happened with the Johnny Hendricks fight? Like, what the fuck? then people will be like, oh shit, this guy's real. He's asking them questions. I mean, everyone's thinking it, he's saying it, type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think being a real person like that is, I think it can either bode well for you or not well at all. It just depends on the people listening and how well you market yourself, and if you're a good person or not. I mean, I like to think of myself as a decent human being. And that's it. I mean, if you're a good person, people like you, and just go from there. Don't change because you see Joe Rogan doing something and you think you're going to do the same thing. It's fucking Joe Rogan. You're not going to get the amount of money and following that he has. Just be you, be yourself, have fun, and just enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, the whole thing with doing this podcast for me is just having fun. I have guests on that I want to talk to and, you know, have a good time with. You know, we think of it as a party, a microphone party, and we over here having a good time. And that's genuine to what this show is. You know, I had some people, you know, at one point try to say, oh, you're trying to be Joe Rogan. It was like, not at all. Far from it, as a matter of fact. Yeah, because it's like, if you know who I am, and then you know, if you know me in real life and then you're on the show, it's like, it's no different, you know.
Right.
The only difference that might be is that, you know, because I know we're recording, you know, I might be a little like, like if I'm sitting here in my basement joking with my friends, you know, I'm not going to bring up personal stuff, sure. Whereas like if we're on the mic, we're joking, you know, we're going to crack jokes, but we're going to keep it, you know, within the realm of like, look, you know, we're not putting anyone's personal business out there. It's like, you know, when people say, oh, well, you know, try to compare you to other podcasts. It's like, I mean,
no,
you know, that's just things like you can't right. compare this show to Joe Rogan. You can't compare it to Fighter and the Kid. You can't compare it to, what was it? Andrew Schultz's show, Flagrant 1, you know, it's like you can't really, it's like the shows are, you know, their shows do what they do and our shows don't do what we do. And, you know, like you said, if you have GSP on your show and you like, look, that Hendricks fight, you know, I got to ask you, do you genuinely think you won that fight? Like,
yeah,
like what are your feelings on it? Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just tell us. Like, you know you lost that fight, right? Because we know you lost.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's fine if you say you lost. It's okay, because I mean, you walk away with the belt. I mean, same thing with John Jones, because that'd be something I would like. Hey, that Dominic Reyes fight. You think you won? Because
so the guy that ref that fight, he's a jiu-jitsu coach here in Texas. He has an academy. He's a decent guy. Like, you know, he's been a referee for a long time. He reffed one of my fights. He's a very genuine person. Good dude, great referee, great jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's a black belt, and nice. He's also a human. You know, people got to understand that as well. So, I mean, like I said, who knows? I think Dominic Reyes won that fight too, but hey, he was one of the judges, and that's that.
Yeah,
it's over with.
But it is weird because, like, when I watched it the first time, I was like, yeah, John Jones won, but I didn't really watch it. You know, it was just on. I wasn't really, you know, I didn't watch it live or anything. And then the next two times I watched the fight, I was like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
like
it's different.
like watching John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight. I go back and forth
Oh
between that
man,
fight. It's a weird
yeah,
fight, but that Dominic Reyes fight, I'm like, I just don't see how John Jones won that fight. In the previous fight before that, Thiago Santos, that was a split decision, and
yeah,
I feel like John won that fight more than like, and that was a split decision versus Dominic Reyes. It was unanimous. It's like, I don't agree with that at all. Like, if that was a split
yeah,
decision, it's like, that seems accurate, but I think Dominic won.
right.
Um, but either way, it's like, talking to these guys, if ever there's an opportunity, you get GSP, like, hey man, what the fuck? Like, tell me, how do you feel about that fight? Do you
Right.
really think you won? And then John Jones, that'd be a question too, with the Dominic Reyes fight, because it's like, and of course, John Jones, he's gonna say, yeah, I won. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
of course. They're all
like,
going to say
okay.
they won. Of course, I get that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, I
But
think GSP might actually, he may not necessarily say outright that he won, but he'll allude to like he won the fight. But I feel like he would say some shit like along the lines of like, I did everything that the refs or the judges liked. I did everything that was asked of me, and I got the W. And it's like, okay, but do you think you
yeah,
won? Like, that's all I want to know.
yeah.
What do you think? Whereas
Don't
John
beat
Jones
around
like,
the bush here, GSP.
yeah. Actually, someone that I've had here on the podcast, Abby Wagner, she had GSP on her show, and like shortly after we recorded. So, like, I always say, like, jokingly, it's like by default, GSP has been on my show then. So, like, I'm just gonna take clips from her show. And yeah, like famous guests on the show, GSP, just start dropping names like, oh, you had GSP on your show? Well, I didn't technically have him on my show, but someone I know had him on their show. So get those points where you can.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Drew, this has been awesome. I'm glad we got to sit down and chat, and I would love to talk with you again and have you back on. Like, it's always like these first episodes is always kind of like that get to know you vibe, and then it's like, oh, I want to have you back on, so now we can cut loose and like really like just start. I almost feel like this episode we have just been kind of cutting loose, but it is like,
yeah,
let's go deeper. But like, I definitely want to have you back on though, for sure.
Oh, absolutely, man. I would love to come back on anytime you want.
Awesome.
I would love to have you on my show as well. That'd be cool.
Sure. I mean, you let me know. I'll make the time. I'm always, juggling the schedule around. So you let me know, and I got you, my friend.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Thank you again for the flexibility. And before we get out of here, do you have any shout outs or mentions that you'd like to drop for us here?
Go, if you haven't already, go check out my podcast, The Matt Mindset. If you want to follow the Instagram, feel free. It's at @the_Matt_mindset. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube. If you want to follow my personal page, it's Drew_Elder. And that's pretty much it. I'd appreciate the follows, appreciate the listens, and thank you again for having me on the show. I sincerely appreciate the sincerity and just the availability of having me on. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely, no problem, my friend. And I'll be sure to put all your links and everything in the notes, the show notes, so everybody will know where to find you at. And as always, to the listeners, thank you. We appreciate you. And if y'all have any questions or concerns or criticisms, always feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mats Podcast, also on Instagram. You can also email me at offthemats2020@gmail.com. I'm not really sure why I went with Off the Mats 2020. Like, I think it was probably late, and I probably could have just did Off the Mats Podcast at Gmail, but we've come this far and we're not changing it. So offthemats2020@gmail.com. We all make mistakes. I want to give a big shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio: Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky Ticky, everyone from the Nerd Rage Collective. I love you guys. Thank you. If it were not for Nerd Rage Radio, I would not be doing podcasts. So thank you to those fellas over there, because they got sick of my shit with sports and martial arts, and they said, go do your own thing. So here we are. I want to give a shout out to my other podcast. So you like horror? If you like scary movies, go check it out, because that's what we talk about over there. Whether it be cursed films, whether it be just genres, subgenres, whether it be a full franchise like A Nightmare on Elm Street or The Omen, we like to talk about that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So go check it out. If you're into scary movies, if you're not, don't bother. You're wasting your time. But if you like it, go do it, and then also leave a review. Like that shit really helps us out. Go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Yeah, because it helps us out a lot. And yeah, leave a review for this show too. Y'all stop doing that. I want some reviews so I can read them out on the air. And then, like, if they're good, if they're bad reviews, I'm not reading that shit. If y'all don't like the show, send me an email and I'll read it. But I'm not gonna read it on air. But don't mess up my score. Right now, I think I got 5 stars across the board. So don't fuck this up for me. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to my guest here, the host of the Matt Mindset podcast, Mr. Drew Elder. Thank you very much again for being my guest here, making the time, my friend.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well. And I can't wait to do this again, actually, because now that we've gotten kind of like warmed up, it's like, oh, goody gumdrop. We gonna sit down and we gonna cut up. So like those first episodes are always like super professional. It's like, okay, we got to let people know, like, look, we grown-ups. Okay, we grown-ups.
Yeah.
But once you get to those second and third episodes, it's like, all right, look, just give me your opinion on this fucked up situation. And it's like, okay, this is what I think. And then people started like we should have never gave them microphones.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for that. And again, to the listeners, thank you. We love you guys. And you know how it goes. You guys keep listening, and we're going to keep making these shows. Thank you to everyone, and ciao.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.